This is Inside the Right. As always, I'm joined by my co-host and longtime Republican operative, Tim Miller, who's here to give us a better look at what's happening on the right. So, Tim, we are at the 3-year anniversary of January 6th. A new poll now shows that a quarter of all Americans believe that the FBI instigated the events of January 6th. And that's a line that's being propped up and promoted by Vivek Ramaswamy. Here's a clip of him admitting to this on stage at a Republican debate.
Why am I the only person on the stage, at least, who can say that January 6th now does look like it was an inside job? That the government lied to us for 20 years about Saudi Arabia's involvement in 9/11? That the Great Replacement theory is not some grand right-wing conspiracy theory, but a basic statement of the Democratic Party's platform?
So, as a longtime Republican operative, is this really the hill that it makes sense for Republicans to die on, like relitigating bullshit fringe grievances from 3 years ago that don't stand up to the mildest of scrutiny?
Well, it wouldn't have been if Donald Trump wasn't the nominee this time. I think it could have been pretty easy for the party to move on.
Yeah.
But now with us being on the cusp of Donald Trump being the party's representative again, I do think that there is some kind of psychological need and desire for the Republicans to alibi themselves about what happened on January 6th. And so I think that is what underlies all this. We went through the full cycle, Brian, as you remember, a couple of years ago, when, it was like, at first it was Antifa did it, and then it was, they were peaceful and this wasn't that big of a deal. And you finally come around to what they've settled on here, which is that the FBI did it. And I think that serves their compulsion to believe that the deep state is out to get Donald Trump, right? So it kind of serves these two masters. Number one, it's like, we didn't really do it. We're not that bad. It was actually the deep state that was that bad. And so I think that's why that is this kind of cozy comfort food for the base and why they've settled on this one. And so does it serve a political purpose for them? Maybe, but I think mostly it serves like a deep psychological need to not be, there's the old meme, are we the baddies? Like nobody wants to be the baddies, right? And I think that is what this is doing.
Well, Vivek's polling right now is making it clear as he continues to like fall down in the rankings of the Republican primary. His polling is making it clear that he isn't a viable candidate even in the Republican primary, at least not at this point in time. What do you believe is his play here? Is it just to prime himself as the not Donald Trump in the event that Trump is convicted and sent to prison?
No, I think he's well, I think there are a couple things at play. One is I think he's running air cover for Donald Trump and he wants to, demonstrate his usefulness. So when Trump's the nominee, he can, be best positioned for some high-ranking role with Trump. So I think that is part of it. I think he also is making a bet that I think is probably the right bet. Sadly, that the party is moving this direction anyway. And if he wants to go back to Ohio and run for Senate or run for Congress or run for governor or something, that like kind of positioning himself as being the younger generation Trump kind of type candidate is probably good for him in a primary. But I know this is going to be hard to believe. I think that he's kind of radicalized himself. We all have the person in our life, like between 2020 and COVID, that got a little crazy, one way or the other. And I think that Vivek might have radicalized himself over all this. I got to spend a little time with his campaign team, not with him, a few weeks ago. And we had a couple beers and I was pretty surprised by how genuine they were about all of this. Like I was kind of expecting it to be one of those things where you get on to beer 3 and they're like, all right, buddy, like we're just kind of doing this because you have to. And that wasn't what I was getting. So I think that you get in this bubble, you start to convince yourself of things, you play mind games yourself. And so anyway, I think that it definitely began as a strategic move to give cover to Trump and to help his career long term. But there might be some more play here.
Well, I guess like building that out further on this whole January 6th FBI conspiracy theory, why the cognitive I feel like I know what the answer is going to be to this question, but why the cognitive dissonance between the fact that the FBI was responsible for this attack, but also that the people who were caught were all Trump loyalists who deserve pardons? Like, why doesn't actual logic seem to? I feel like there's a lot of us here who can recognize like the clear break in basic logic. Why does it not seem to break through?
This is, I don't have a good answer to the why, but it's worth ranting about this for a second because sometimes you just get into this conspiracy muck and, especially me, where I have to I listen to all these guys and watch them. And every once in a while you find yourself nodding on it and you have to step back and be like, wait a second, like what? And this is the stupidest of all the conspiracies. I mean, even JFK Jr. being alive and being a Trump supporter, like at least that conspiracy theory, you could kind of imagine it, like the plane crash happens and JFK wanted to live a second life and now he's back. It's crazy. Don't get me wrong. It's crazy, but you can kind of see how that happened. This conspiracy theory makes no sense. It's like, it makes no sense. It was still Trumpers that were stabbing police officers.
Yeah.
It was still Trump officials that were breaking through the glass. Ashley Babbitt was still a Trump person, and so it like is self-implicating. To believe this conspiracy theory, you have to believe that the Trump base is so stupid and pliable and malleable that like a handful of Fed boys could whisper in their ear, "Charge the Capitol." Spear the police, and that they would all be like, yes sir, that's what I'm going to do. I mean, like the whole thing is crazy. I always my favorite counterfactual on this is like, imagine if some feds during the women's march after Trump won had started to say to the people in the pink pussy hats like, charge the White House, kill Trump. Everybody would be like, what are you talking about? Like, who is the crazy person? So the conspiracy theory makes no sense. And I think that the reality is that at some level these people know that they are guilty, and that they're just grasping around for anything that would allow them to point the finger at somebody else. And because this kind of deep state narrative has sunk so deep into their psyche, that this is the one that they kind of settled on. But it's really dumb. It's really dumb. And I feel like we need to make just cut this up and like send this to your MAGA uncle.
Yeah, no, it's true. I mean,
this is the one issue where I want to pierce the bubble. Usually I go to these events and I just want to listen to them and try to understand what they're thinking, but it's the one issue where I want to shake them and be like, how can you be this dumb?
right. I mean, it's true though. I mean, you're basically saying that you have, as a Trump supporter, so little agency over your own body and your own actions that like all it takes is what, like an FBI agent to say to prime you to storm the Capitol, and then you just do it. You have no self-control. You have no ability to discern like what you're doing. It's just that somebody, to your exact point, somebody's been whispering in your ear, and then you just charge the Capitol like completely independent of your own body. It really doesn't make any sense. And to your point, it is so like it does show so much contempt for these people, because it shows that like you don't have any ability to control yourself, and that they're all just kind of accepting that reality.
Yeah, no, it's not. It's definitely not a conspiracy theory you'd believe if you had a really high regard for your fellow MAGA Americans. The other thing that's just worth mentioning, just as a fact-based element, since we're in the fact world here on this YouTube feed, like we have all the court documents, right? Many of these people who have who are guilty, who've pled guilty, said why they went. Several of them have said it was Donald Trump convinced me to go, right? Like this is something that many people confess to. Now there are a handful of people also that are in jail that believe crazy conspiracy theories, but you can just look at the actual legal court documents, which none of these people do, right? It's because it's kind of like the same way where if you're guilty of something and you don't, nobody loves to read bad information that's going to make them feel and look bad, right? So they just block it out, right? But anybody that has looked at the reporting and the very extensive reporting that's been done on these legal cases by Lawfare and others, like knows that many of the people that perpetrated this crime on January 6th have admitted that they're MAGA and that they were there and that they wanted to be there because Donald Trump asked them to.
Right. And by the way, those are the only ones that matter, because that's where you actually are forced to tell the truth. And so like you can do
Right.
what you want in the court of public opinion, that doesn't matter. But like it does say something that when these people are confronted with a judge and perjury charges, if they lie, that the party line suddenly evaporates and it all becomes just very clear that they're there because they were incited to be there by Donald Trump.
Sounds very familiar to the election fraud cases.
Right,
Same story is there.
Yeah. We've seen a lot of the Republican officials who had spoken out against January 6th come around to the talking point that it was really no big deal now. And I think a lot of those on the left or in the center, you know, those who believe in democracy and just basic reality, kind of have this sense of despair at the fact that we're seeing fewer and fewer people on the right willing to acknowledge objective reality. Can you speak on that?
I share the despair. Honestly, I have some hope that this year is going to shake people. I think that there's a lot of disbelief that Donald Trump is really going to be the nominee in center-right circles, and that people are just coming to terms with it. I have a funny story for you. I was on a panel with Karl Rove about a year ago. And I was like, Donald Trump's going to win the nomination. And he was like, no, it's going to be Brian Kemp or something. And just last week, Carl wrote an article where he was like, column where what he does is like year end, things I was right about, things I was wrong about. And this was like the thing that he was wrong about. And I sent him a joking email. And it's like, you know, I just think that it's starting to sink in, right? And I'm hopeful that some, not many, not all, probably not Carl, who knows, but when it sinks in, for some percentage of these Republicans, they're going to come out and just say, hey, we cannot do this again. Like, we just cannot. The problem is those people are not going to be elected officials. And the Marco Rubios of the world, you know, is one good example of what you're talking about. He sent a tweet about how this was very serious after January 6th. And now just recently he's talking about how it's overblown in a media thing.
Right.
Like the people like that, in order to rationalize their existence as a Republican senator, like they've come around on this. And like this is, you know, if they want to stay in power, if they don't want to retire and go back, you know, move home, then they need to figure out a way to rationalize this. And so I think that there's good reason to despair when it comes to the elected Republican class in Washington. There's not a lot of heroes. There's not many people that are going to come out and do the right thing in the next year. I'm hoping among the retired class, people that served in Trump's administration, former Republicans. That's something that I'll be monitoring a lot this year. Hopefully some of them we can get off the sidelines.
Well, for those viewers watching and wondering where those, you know, sane Republicans are, I would definitely recommend that you subscribe to The Bulwark. You can see Tim more on that YouTube channel there. So I'll put the link on this screen and also in the post description of this video. Again, if you're looking to support Tim's work, that's the best way to do that. With that said, I'm Brian Tyler Cohen.
I'm Tim Miller.
This is Inside the Right.